This week, Seth and I continue our tiers and ranks and clusters, pods, whatever you want to call it. But we're talking about running backs and tight ends this week, as well as answering your questions in the Fact Attack.
These are the Fantasy Facts with your hosts, Pat Loftus and Seth Keller.
Hey-o! We're getting pretty good at this intro thing, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're working on getting a brand new one put together, but it's taken a little while getting the creatives on it, and so we're working on that. Because it's a lot easier to just push a button and
There's a lot of there's a lot of clicking around, and there's I just saw the message you sent me, you son of a bitch. Yes, of course I did that. I was having technical issues. My camera was down, and Seth asked me if I just closed the little shutter thing on it. Clearly, that's not what was wrong. But
I mean, maybe you put the lens. You have the lens cap on. That's what I was working with.
Yeah, no, it was a little more difficult than just turning it off and turning it back on again. But whatever. We're here.
Stuff happens.
It does. We improvise, adapt, overcome. Right.
There you go.
All right, well, let's get into it. This is the Fantasy Facts podcast presented by Fantasy Data. Again, we're talking about our tiers, our ranks, running backs and tight ends this week. But first, we want to make sure you give the show a follow on Twitter. It's at The Fantasy Facts. You can find us anywhere, or on YouTube, but you can pretty much find us anywhere. Or on YouTube, anywhere else you listen to podcasts. That's where you can find us. So keep a sharp eye out. We are now on Apple. Apple Podcasts as well. We just got the good news from them, so you can find us there now too. So, we're everywhere now. Yeah, since we're everywhere, we do have a couple of promotional codes that you guys get to take advantage of. You see how I did there?
That was nice. That was professionals.
Nice. I made that up on the fly. You can use the code FAQS, that's FAQS, at underdog.com. They'll give you a 100% deposit match up to $100 for your first deposit. You can use the code FAQS, FAQS, at fantasydata.com, and you can receive 20% off your subscription purchase. Again, FAQS at fantasydata.com, FAQS at underdog.com for those promotions. We have a little bit of breaking news to cover. Seth, do we have that? Are we ready to go to the news desk?
We're ready to go.
Fresh from the Fantasy Facts news desk.
So this week, we have a couple of minor things to talk about. Let's talk about the good first. If you're following the Washington Commanders, they and Terry Mclaurin agreed to a 3-year extension worth up to $71 million in new money that's going to place him among the 5 highest paid wide receivers in the NFL, according to sources that had told ESPN. Seth, how are we feeling about Terry McLaurin and this massive new contract?
I thought he was being undervalued going into this season, into the draft season anyways, and I'm sure this is going to counteract that a little bit because there's so much of the follow the money group of drafters that are going to say, well, he got paid, he's going to be more involved. And I think it's going to kind of right the ship a little bit on him because he was falling down the draft board quite a bit, considering he's been pretty consistent, especially considering what a bad
shit show.
Yeah, he's just had a shit show at quarterback. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So, fantasydata.com, we have him as wide receiver 17 with an ADP near the end of the 4th round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
there's not a whole lot of target competition in Washington. He's basically been 1,000-yard wide receiver. He was 80 yards short in 2019. He is the alpha.
Clearly
Washington.
The alpha there.
In Washington, The only thing they're lacking is a legit quarterback. I mean, Carson Wentz will be the best quarterback that he's played with in his career, which isn't saying much.
I think that is saying a lot, considering the fact that he's had 191 fantasy points as a rookie, 223 fantasy points as a sophomore, 213 fantasy points as a junior. Like, considering that he's had Tyler Heineke, was it Heineke?
It doesn't matter. It's basically me and you under center. It doesn't matter.
And
Garbage.
I got a bum shoulder, both of them.
Yeah.
So it's not pretty. He's had over 1,000 yards back-to-back seasons. Like, his touchdowns have suffered, but it's because that whole offense has suffered. Like, we're gonna get more into a running back that I'm interested in with this team later, but that offense stands to make moves forward just by, like, Wentz is not a phenomenal quarterback, but he's a functional quarterback. Like, he's going to be more capable than what he's had his entire career.
True.
And that's a step up.
Agreed. Let's get to the more serious news, something that we haven't really talked a whole lot about. One, you put this in there and you spelled his name wrong.
Well, you should have fixed that then. You know I don't speak Spanish, Baxter.
I'm just now reading this. Anyway, the NFL is pushing for a 1 year to indefinite suspension for Deshaun Watson. Yep. I haven't heard anything new. I know they were talking today, but the expectation was it's going to take more than a day to negotiate a possible punishment for Deshaun Watson. So a lot left there.
Yeah, if he wasn't in your category of I'm not going to draft him, not even if there's a fire. Morally, I think now it's like, okay, even probability wise, he's going to get a very, very significant suspension.
Yes.
And, your chances of actually being able to play him are going to be quite low.
So I would imagine the expectation is to get something resolved regarding a punishment by the end of this week. So keep your eyes on the Twitters and wherever you get your fantasy football news, because I would imagine that's breaking by the end of the week. To the opening question. You're on mute.
I said, I think we should. It's time to crack one open. Oh, that's a good one. With the opening question.
Excellent. This week, the question comes from @JDRERE25. Which of these players should I keep for the next 2 years? Draft cost is in parentheses, half PPR scoring. Deontay Johnson in the 5th, Cortland Sutton in the 6th, A.J. Dillon in the 8th.
That is tricky. I'm gonna go Cortland Sutton here. Yeah, I'm gonna go Cortland Sutton. It's a bit of a back and forth in my own brain, and part of it was looking up Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon earlier today, and realizing just how many touches AJ Dillon actually got this past year. But I don't see AJ Dillon overtaking Aaron Jones this year. I see Aaron Jones having a phenomenal year. Hint, hint. We're going to talk about it in the main part of the show today. AJ Dillon is a value in the 8th round.
He's more of a value in a dynasty versus we're looking at a 2-year window here. I don't see AJ Dillon surpassing Aaron Jones in the next 2 years.
I could see it not this coming year, maybe the next year. Aaron Jones is getting a bit older, but
barring injury, it's Aaron Jones backfield, and it's Aaron Jones with the majority of the shares. and the carries in that backfield.
Yeah.
I'm with you on Cortland Sutton. You got to look at this in a 2-year window, right? Cortland Sutton is tied to Russell Wilson for the next 2 years.
For the next 2 years.
Deontay Johnson has
Kenny Pickett.
Again, Deontay Johnson. Yeah.
Trubisky.
Yeah. Cortland Sutton in the 6th round. I think to me that's very good value. You're getting a guy tied to an elite quarterback for 2 years in the 6th round. I think that's the clear winner here out of these three is Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, I think so as well.
All right, let's get into the bulk of the show, where again we're continuing our show from last week. Last week was quarterbacks and wide receivers. This week is tight ends and running backs. And Seth, give the people a recap of how we're going to differentiate ourselves with these versus what you might see in other ranks or tiers or whatever.
Yeah, so one of the fundamental flaws I see with rankings is that they are linear where a draft is not. And a draft gets very non-linear when you get to the point of somebody goes out of order at some point. It's going to happen. It's always going to happen because everyone's going to have different ranks. And so what happens is you get into this never-ending set of contingencies where it's like, well, if I take Josh Allen in the 3rd, what do the rest of my rankings look like? If I go 0 RB, what do the rest of my rankings look like? If I go heavy RB, if I go hero RB, if I go wide receiver, like there's so many different ways. And one of them today, talking about tight ends. If I go tight end early, if I punt tight end, how does that change different rankings? Because if I take a tight end early, that pushes all the tight ends out of my ranks essentially for the rest of the draft, unless it's the last round or two of the draft. There's not really much of a reason for me to even be looking at another tight end if I have a Kelsey or if I have a Pitts or if I have a Kittle, a Waller, and Andrews, who was the tight end 1 last year. And so what we wanted to do to make it more dynamic is kind of put them in categories and give you a sense of where do guys fall more in terms of a narrative, which provides the context around the number. So you can start to think, well, here are the guys that I see taking a step forward. Here's the guys that I see that are in my, I'm never going to draft. And even if it's a fire.
Even if there's a fire.
Yeah. So it gives a bit more context to the linearity of ranks, and it allows you to use them in conjunction with each other. So that's why I like to call it the anti-ranking show.
Anti-ranks. Yeah. We're ranks, they're tiers, they're groups, they're pods, they're clusters, whatever you want to call it. We're going to start with the tight ends first. And this is where it gets tricky because the odds on tight end 1, you could ask 5 people and maybe get 5 different answers.
Yeah. And
you had talked about Mark Andrews, and I know we're not going to talk too much about tiers, but Mark Andrews is my tight end 1. He is the guy that I feel is going to repeat his tight end 1. He's at the top of that for me for the odds on tight end 1. Kelsey's just behind him. You have it a little different. But again, you could ask 5 people and probably get 5 different responses depending on where these people are located.
Yeah, so, my odds on tight end 1 is Kelsey. I think with Hill leaving, he still has Mahomes. He steps into that, that wide receiver 1 role. Right. Even though his age is up there and he stands the most to lose, he also is my safe bet. I think you're getting the safest set of outcomes by putting Kelsey as one, but I could see Andrews being up there also. And I think you're right with ask 5 different people, you have a chance of getting 5 completely different answers.
Right. It's going to be the tight end discussion because you can look at it a couple of ways. And you had mentioned to me pre-show, like it's tight end 1 potential, and then it's really just everyone else.
Yeah.
Right. And I think most people, it's no longer a secret to hammer the top tier tight ends because they give you such a positional advantage, especially when, these guys are scoring at wide receiver clips. And now especially with tight end premium leagues as well. I mean, it's no longer a secret to hammer. What is that? Is that your phone in the background?
That was my arm turning my phone on while I was trying to pull the tight end ADP at the same time. So that was funny. You repeating, hammering tight ends earlier. There you go.
I caught a bit of that, yeah. I mean, look, Kelsey's my tight end too, right? I've got Andrews and Kelsey, and then I have a decent gap before we get into the guys like Pitts, Waller, and Kittle. Also have tight end 1 potential, but not really like an odds-on favorite, right? Each of those teams have done things or not done things to help the tight end position. Where Pitts in Atlanta, they didn't bring in a decent quarterback, right? Yeah. It's Mariota and there's Ritter.
The Raiders, one. Oh, go ahead.
You say the Raiders brought in Devontae Adams, and they have Hunter Renfrow emerging, and they brought in competition. And the same, San Francisco they have Debo. They have 18 running backs that are probably going to be an RB1 this they also
all 18 of them going to be
18 of them are going to be they're going to have RB1 weeks. Okay, that's an exaggeration. But obviously, you get there are other things in play there where there's a bug in my face. I'm not swatting at nothing, I promise.
Pat's been drinking. All right.
Water, lots of water. But no, go ahead. Go jump in. But there are other,
yeah,
there are other circumstances around those tight ends.
Right. And I think your main group of top tight ends actually opens the door for one guy that I'm going to throw out as my middle of the pack group that could jump into the tight end, full-blown, the tight end 1 spot. And that is not anything to do with my Cowboys banner hanging up here, but Dalton Schultz. Think about it.
Did you look at my tiers? Because you're going to hate where I put him.
Oh, is it completely different?
Yeah.
I think it is. I think Dalton Schultz, out of all of the guys in that kind of middle group, has the best passing quarterback in that set of groups, and an offense that has lost target opportunities, or I guess that would be gain target opportunities, because they lost Amari Cooper, who had so many targets for them last year. And you're hoping that Dak, now another year removed from breaking his ankle with a compound fracture, to me that's a step in the right direction with him getting more volume and being able to do more with it. And he finished the season really well last year. So he takes another step forward. We could see Schultz maybe climb above these guys if Kelsey's age starts showing. If Andrews with Lamar actually is a thing versus Andrews with Huntley. If Pitts, not having a quarterback outside of, he was much better with Matt Ryan than either of the 2 new guys that are in. Kittle with God knows what type of offense, mostly a running offense in San Francisco. And Is it Garoppolo? Is it Lance? Is Garoppolo on the outs? Is Lance ready to take that step forward? All things that we talked about. Is Waller going to lose significant passing opportunities to Devontae Adams? I would assume he has to, because of just the talent level. So that all of that right there just opens the door. Now, again, odds on favorite for me, it's Kelsey. But taking the odds, I really like Schultz.
Yeah. I don't see it. Like, yes, Schultz finished last year strong. Yes, they lost Amari Cooper. I don't know. This is just kind of my gut feeling. Just a feeling that Dallas offense isn't going to be as powerful as we think it might be, right?
Yeah, and coming from our friends at Fantasy Data, talking about the middle of the pack guys, intriguing more. So I like Dalton Schultz as my middle of the pack guy. So I'm going to put you on the hot seat here, Pat. Mm-hmm. Who is one of your guys in these middle of the pack groupings? Right now, looking at Fantasy Data's rankings, Schultz is 6. Then you have Hawk at 7, Goddard at 8, Dawson Knox at 9. I was merging 9 and Dawson at the same time, and Zach Ertz at 10. Those are kind of your middle of the pack guys, I would say. Anyone in there that you're really interested in, or
the one name that you didn't talk about is probably the guy that I have the most interest in, and it's Pat Freiermuth. That Pittsburgh, and I know I've just trashed, some offenses because of quarterback play, and Pittsburgh did bring in a new quarterback, but the rookie numbers that he put up, if Kyle Pitts wasn't in the NFL last year, Pat Freiermuth is the name that everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
Now,
great point.
We're looking specifically at tight ends. He's young. He broke out last year. Yes, there's a significant change in the quarterback there, but Freiermuth is a name that I like. And by no means am I saying he's going to finish as the tight end 1, but if we're talking middle of the pack guys that can provide value, I'll take Pat Freiermuth, followed probably closely. I'm going to cheat here and put another name, followed closely by Zach Ertz. Those are the two names that I think are the middle of the pack guys that would be. They're starters every week. They're not guys you're looking to stream, but those, if I'm picking middle of the pack, I like Freiermuth then Ertz.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw in another thing here from Adam Siegel. Huge value outside of the top 5. Some great guys going for $1. If you don't know Adam's big into the auction, side of drafts, which is a ton of fun. He does some live mock drafts, auction mock drafts, as well as a bunch of just he does a stream. I think he's aiming for once a month, which was really cool. I was able to be on one of his live auction streams, and it was a whole lot of fun. So going for $1, this is to convert that to snake or some kind of linear draft like that. Going for $1 means that you're taking them late, right? And there is just so much opportunity here. And if you've followed the show in the past, my whole Scott Fishbowl strategy has been punt tight end, punt, pick up the ball one more time and punt it down the field again. And that's where I end up with guys like CJ Uzomah, who, it's a huge joke between Pat and I, because he's been a guy that you could start in spots. And that's the thing with tight end is tight end is one of the most difficult positions to be able to nail down, because it is so touchdown dependent, and touchdowns are so variable and so difficult to predict. And so, big news like Gronk retiring, which we talked about last year, opens the door for, spending $1 on Cade Otton, spending $1 on Cameron Brate. Exactly. And I mean, at that, honestly, you could probably spend less than $1 on them. You could probably spend less than a draft pick on them.
You could spend nothing on them and pick them. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So that's my preferred strategy, is if I don't get one of my top guys early, it's punt. Especially maybe take a swing at one of these middle guys, depending on how value falls to me. But after that, punt.
That's the beauty with auction leagues as well. And I've got one coming up in end of August, and I'm going to be picking Adam's brain here whenever I can, because, you look at we'll just call it the big five. If your strategy isn't to get one of them and spend for one of them, where are you going with that, with your budget? Where are you looking? And there are a dozen or more names that, are going to be, I'm going to say, reliable starters, fantasy starters every week for you.
Yeah.
Because the tight end position is just so volatile, looking at, scoring over the years. I'm trying to stall as I pull up tight end scoring from last year for the tight end position, just to see how big of a disparity we're looking at between. Yeah, I mean, even going from Mark Andrews is a tight end 1 in PPR leagues last year, there was a 40-point drop to Kelsey, a 60-point drop down to Dalton Schultz, who finished as tight end 3. So you're seeing there's just massive drops there, and then you get into like 10-point drops, and then it gets a little bit closer. Basically, tight end 7 and tight end 13 are only separated by 20 points.
Yeah,
so
which is
you got to
like
find
a point a game. Yeah,
that you're finding your value there. So tight ends are fun, but also not fun, because when you guess wrong, you're screwed.
Yeah, but hopefully you guess wrong at the same time that somebody else in your league guesses wrong also, and that's why I'm okay with punting at tight end. Depending on the format, best ball, it's a little more aggressive in getting those top guys, but there's so much more emphasis on doing that it is it's almost at some point the pendulum needs to swing back, because the pendulum is so far on if you don't walk away with Kelsey or Andrews, then you're going to lose. And so it's becoming such an overvalue that now at some point that value will start swinging back the other way, waiting on them. So, all right, that was way more than I thought we would talk about tight ends, since since especially the two of us are in the mindset of get them early or don't get them at all.
Right.
So now it's the fun part of the show.
This is going to be difficult, because we tried to break it down in kind of the same kind of groups as we did with wide receivers. And I guess we'll just start at the very top, right? We've got the odds on RB1, and anyone saying anything other than Jonathan Taylor, I think is a bit crazy, if you ask me. I didn't, like, you put the names in the show sheet here. I agree, Jonathan Taylor. I don't agree with any of the other names on there. Honestly, I think it should be just Jonathan Taylor and then everyone else.
And okay, so maybe it's like I agree. He's far and away the favorite to be the RB1. But we know that there's things that happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
So these are guys that I'm thinking like
surprised.
They have the greatest, like, in thinking of range of outcomes, they have the greatest amount of outcomes that put them at the RB1. And some of that kind of requires like Jonathan Taylor to struggle for one reason or another, either because the Colts as a whole struggle, or he struggles with injury or something like that. All things that we know impact running backs a lot more. Maybe not a lot more, but it impacts all fantasy players, right? Because it's a very team sport where everyone has to play well in order for consistent results like this. So I think you're right that Jonathan Taylor's kind of up here in a tier alone. And if we were doing very linear ranks, easy to put him as number one.
Right. The one, and I'm surprised you put him in there because of your disdain for undrafted free agents, but you put Eckler, Najee, and Aaron Jones in this, right? In this kind of group. I do like seeing Austin Eckler in there, but I'm going to just say I think Joe Mixon should be included in there.
I mean, we'll put him in there. Talk about why.
I mean, I think the Cincinnati offense is just. I mean, I think they're going to be not unstoppable, but man, that since the offense looks like they're going to be scary. They really do. They've improved they've improved across the board, and that's including T. Higgins and Jamar Chase getting another year of experience. That's Joe Burrow getting health. I mean, he's healthy last year, but now he's fully removed from the knee injury. I mean, they upgraded the O-line. I mean, this offense they're stacked, and yes, Mixon or Chase and Higgins are going to benefit from that. But I think Joe Mixon should be seriously in the conversation, in the RB1 conversation.
Yeah, and I think Mixon also benefits from not having a ton of competition, even though weirdly in the Super Bowl, Samaje Perine coming in and things like that. But there's not a whole lot of competition for touches for Joe Mixon. Right. There's also the Bengals have a good defense as well. Mm-hmm. They were one of the teams that we identified early on last year as like, hey, this defense has been bad previously, but they're looking better and better and better and better. And, that's something that we talked about early on, midway through the season last year. And so if this defense maintains that level of competition, that could mean increased just volume for Joe Mixon, and getting those additional touches late in games. He has the ability to, hey, we're up by 10 points and we're just going to hand, boom, Joe Mixon rips off another 45 yarder for a touchdown. He has the ability to do that, right? And I think that's where I don't disagree with Joe Mixon being up there. I like some of the other guys better. And, again, after doing a little bit more research, Aaron Jones is one of those guys where I want to believe it so bad, but I kind of feel like I need to move Aaron Jones into like switch Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon, because I think Joe Mixon has a better opportunity to be there. I think Aaron Jones has it in PPR especially. Aaron Jones has a chance to be the RB1, but I think without PPR, he definitely falls down considerably. So I think I think we're going to switch that up a little bit, and I'm going to move Aaron Jones into the solid RB1 type of category, because I think that's where he's going to fit more.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make the note in our show sheet right now.
I appreciate that. No, I mean, and a lot of these guys too that we're going to talk about, if things break the right way, then yeah, they can finish. I mean, really, these three categories, outside of a couple people, all have the possibility to finish as the RB1. And we're talking CMC, and I'm going to run through a lot of names here, but we've got CMC, Saquon Barkley. You're moving a lot around and it's driving me crazy because I'm talking here.
Sorry,
Alvin Kamara coming off the suspension. I think if he played a full season, yes. But, we get CMC, Barkley, Kamara, Cam Akers coming off an injury, ETN coming off an injury, Rashad Penny coming off. I can't say, I mean, he's always injured. And then we talk about Aaron Jones. We've got Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Swift. I mean, all of those, they're legit RB1s. And I'm pretty sure that's more than 12 names, right? That's 4. That's 6. Yeah, so we're at 13.
Yeah.
But those are all potential RB1s, and if things break the right way, yeah, they could finish as the RB1.
I mean,
I don't know about Travis Etienne. I mean, Akers, Etienne, and Penny, they're probably more solid RB1s. Maybe not Etienne. I don't know. This is a weird. It's not like the group that's in the abyss, but they're coming off an injury. Etienne has not really proven himself yet. Penny's coming off another injury. They drafted Kenneth Walker. I don't know. It's just that weird kind of like really talented running backs, but where are they going to finish?
And that's why I moved it around slightly and then highlighted it. I think those top 3, if they played a full season, they have the potential to be the RB1. They could do that, right? Like Saquon Barkley, CMC, and Alvin Kamara. And it's probably Kamara. Or sorry, it's probably CMC.
Yes.
Kamara if he played a full season. Barkley if he played a full season. Like that would be like the linear ranking of it in my mind. But that's where I think you're getting if they're healthy. And so much of that in your draft is, a question that you need to decide, quick and early on, because they're not going to wait around for you. And so if you do that, and that's why I like kind of these groupings, because now you get the idea of like, all right, well, if I take one of these guys that could be the RB1 if healthy, I either need to, if I'm in a draft where I have to set my lineup each week, I have to kind of your typical redraft setup, whether you're, auction or a snake draft. If you end up with one of these guys, you need to make the decision right away. Like, I'm going to either swing for the fences and double up, or I'm going to play it safe and put a safe guy along with them. And that's where I think these, especially where these kind of categories help out a little bit, because if I'm doing, shout out to our friends over at Underdog, if I'm doing one of the puppy drafts, which they just released the new Super Flex puppy, check that out. Lots of fun. If you do that, I might be more inclined to swing for the fences, because if I play it safe, chances are I'm probably not winning it, because it's a million entry type of tournament, right? Like it's going to get a ton of entries. I need to set myself apart some way. So maybe I want to get CMC and Saquon. And if that one draft just bombs, that one draft bombs.
Right.
But if it hits big.
Yeah.
And so, that I like those guys for that. The other guys I think they're more questions of like if they're healthy and if they're able to, they're going to be of values at where you get them if they're healthy. Can they be the RB1? I don't think so.
No,
but can they be
not.
Values? Yes. Akers, full season, healthy, value.
Here's now that I'm finally looking through the rest of your categories, I just moved those three, and we'll talk about this category next, because I think they would fit better there than under the if healthy.
Okay, that makes sense, dude.
Right, I
do
mean,
you?
So please continue with what you're talking about with those guys.
I mean, to me, it's Akers, it's ETN, it's Penny. It depends on like if they are healthy and if they're, if Akers is 100% healthy. And right now there's good news coming out of camp, but it's still like running around in shorts and a t-shirt and a helmet on.
Yeah.
That's not enough to make me say, Akers is healthy. I'm ready to go. ETN, again, good news coming out about him being ready to go. Does that make me that much more confident about him? It doesn't. But again, it depends on how the draft is going and how my particular draft is going. If I want to swing for the fences and I pair CMC, Saquon, and ETN, there's a whole lot of variance in that.
Yeah.
Whole lot. And that, like, if I had to set a lineup every week with that, I'd probably be scared shitless of it. But if I'm just putting them in as a best ball thing, as a best ball draft, I'm a lot happier with that and feel like, hey, there's weeks where those three guys alone, again, if they're all healthy and they all hit, they win me weeks. Same thing with Rashad Penny. He showed it at the end of last season. The question is he 100% healthy? Again, news coming out that he's already dealing with some kind of nagging injury, so that's not good. But it's also June, let's temper that down just a smidge. And so again, it's are they healthy? Are they 100%? Can we expect full touches out of them? Huge value. They move up. Yeah. If they're not, it is what it is.
Yeah. So the column that I moved those guys to was aptly titled Next Step or Stumble. And I feel like those guys fit well, especially Akers and Penny. They've been in the league. They have a little experience. Can they stay healthy, right? Yeah. Can ETN take that next step in the end, So I like them as a better fit there, along with guys like Javonte Williams, Elijah Mitchell, Miles Sanders. You've got the New England backfield in here, and you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire in here as well. And I think this is a pretty solid list for this category because all of these guys, you're expecting, you're drafting them and expecting big things out of them. But if they stumble, especially for a guy like Miles Sanders or CEH, if they stumble, then they're probably out of a job next year.
Yeah. Getting into a timeshare, or it becomes trade rumors, or
nothing good.
Yeah, nothing good if they don't take that next step. Semantics wise, I would argue this would be ETN's first step because he hasn't played any actual NFL, like any NFL real games yet.
Fair.
But I
maybe,
do think
maybe he would have been a better fit than in the abyss.
Yeah,
because we don't know.
Just in the abyss.
We just don't know what we're going to get out of him.
Yeah. So and also it's hard to put them. It's hard to put them into a category. They're much more amorphous and they don't fit nicely into categories. Where do you want to go next with the? Do you want to keep talking about some of these next step or stumble guys?
I think we know what we're getting into with Javonte Williams. We know Melvin Gordon's there. Mm-hmm. We know what's going on in San Francisco. Miles Sanders is a question mark because they've brought in some guys. They've drafted, Kenny Gainwell. They brought in another guy to run in between the tackles this year, and his name escapes me. Harrison Stevenson, again in New England, that's pretty clear cut 1A, 1B. Now I think we should move over to let's talk about the running backs that are in the abyss.
Okay.
Because I feel like we had a good conversation pre-show about this, and I want to explore that a bit more.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. You came up with the title for the abyss, but this was literally on our show sheet. We just have a bunch of columns and a bunch of guys just kind of in those columns. So like odds on RB1, if healthy, solid RB1s, volume RBs, things like that. And these were guys that I couldn't figure out where they fit. And that's not necessarily because I like them or don't like them. It just became one of these things where it's like, they're tricky to pin down. And I think that makes potentially all of them values, depending on where you can get them in drafts. And so that's why I kind of like the abyss, because it's like, it's that, staring into the abyss. Do I go or not go? And I think, they would be very, polarizing guys to talk about, right? So should we start off with the guy that I think is, I don't know, maybe most polarizing?
I feel like if we start with Singletary, Edmonds, and Pierce, they're in the abyss for different reasons, right? Singletary, Buffalo hasn't really utilized the running back position. Can he beat out Zach Moss? They brought in James Cook, correct? Is that right? They brought so where does Singletary fit in Buffalo? And the same thing with Chase Edmonds. Damien Pierce is in kind of the wasteland down in Houston. Are they going to be? They're going to be losing by 30, so they're going to really turn around and hand the ball off to Damien Pierce that many. There's just a lot going on with those three because they're in a situation like Singletary and like Edmonds where it's a muddled backfield, or they're rookies like Damien Pierce. I feel like that. I don't know. Did I miss anything with those three? I feel like that kind of sums up. Those three.
The one thing that makes it interesting for me, Damien Pierce is the value at which you can get him and the potential he has to be the lead running back there. And so what does that mean for him as being the lead running back? Like you mentioned, they could be losing by 30 each game, which, part of that's why we like Davis Mills as a late quarterback option. I'm scrolling down right now to try and find Damien Pierce. Damien Pierce is RB44 with an ADP of 138.43. That's pretty far down the ADP line. And, it has gone up a little bit, but that's pretty good value. Like if he becomes the number one running back there, that's huge. Like he's already in the top 32-ish if he's the number one running back for his team for the entire season. So I like the value there. Guys like Edmonds, I am much more concerned about because of the cost that you would be paying for a Chase Edmonds, and just how muddled Miami is in general. Miami, very, very muddled in Miami, that entire offense. It could be a steal, and it could be just bleh.
Yeah.
Especially the running game. So I think I'm out on Chase Edmonds.
Same here.
Yeah, I think I'll probably get Devin Singletary at a discount again, just because Devin Singletary is the running back everyone loves to hate. He's like he's the Brandon Cooks of running backs
for good reason.
Except he just gets 1,000 all-purpose yards every season. That's just what he does. Whereas Brandon Cooks is always a wide receiver too, which is a whole lot more valuable. But he's just that guy. He's just just hanging out doing his thing.
The other two I think are a little more polarizing. And it's Antonio Gibson and Kenneth Walker.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the two that I have a hard time. Like, I'm all in on Kenneth Walker. I'm more in on Kenneth Walker than I am on Antonio Gibson. And I can't put a good reason behind it. I know, and we talked about the numbers beforehand. He's been productive. He's been a really good fantasy football and a really good NFL running back. I don't know what it is about Antonio Gibson and the Commanders. I just don't see it. I don't get it. And I don't know if I'm missing something or if I'm overthinking it or I just want him to fail. I don't know. But I'm not big on Antonio Gibson. Help me understand here.
My biggest thing with Antonio Gibson is the effect of people's expectations. And that's what's making him such a value right now. And I'm going to go roundabout here because I'm reading a new book. I think it's going to be great. I can't say it's a great book yet, but I think it's going to be really good. It's called The Black Swan. And it's all about improbable events and the likelihood of them occurring. It kind of takes my median points per game and fat-tailed scoring of fantasy points to another level. And that's what he's talking about for all events. And so there's a random events that happen and we think that they're random, but it's based on perception. And he gives this metaphor of a Thanksgiving turkey. And he's like, for 1,000 days, the farmer comes out and gives the Thanksgiving turkey some food, and the Thanksgiving turkey thinks, this is awesome. This is great. Life is wonderful. But on the 1,001st day, the farmer comes out, wrings its neck, chops its head off, plucks them, and stuffs them for Thanksgiving dinner. And that seems like, to the turkey, as a completely random event because for the past 1,000 days, it's been good things. And so what I think is really funny about that is it's the perception of a random event and the way in which we perceive it as random, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's, I think, what is happening with Antonio Gibson here is people's perception is making his value a benefit now. Whereas last year, I was, pounding on the table saying, like, you're doing the same thing that you do every year, fantasy community, where you take a rookie running back who has a good rookie year, scores over 200 fantasy points. He's going to be the next great running back. Everything about him's awesome. I see the moon, the stars, the planets above revolving around him. He's going to be awesome. And then his draft value just goes completely out the window because, and think about it, rewind to last year. How many podcasts, how many articles, how many people were pounding the table saying Antonio Gibson is a running back one. Draft him as a running back one this year. And I was saying, slow down. Let's think through this. Here are some ways where he's not going to be a running back one. Here's some ways that he could get there, but let's slow down. Let's think about where he's at. And so his value didn't match up to the perception of him. Now we're getting the inverse of that. And it's the same thing that's happened with Josh Jacobs. I think he's a prime example of a running back that had that same issue where people wanted him to be more than he was. And he was just consistently a good running back. Antonio Gibson has not had a season under 200 fantasy points. That right there over the past 3 years puts him in the top 20 conversation alone. Depending on the year, even higher. And that's over the past 3 years. He's had he improved in every category from his rookie year to his sophomore year, except for in yards per carry and rushing touchdowns, which we know rushing touchdowns, just touchdowns in general, are variable, but he still scored 11-year one and 10-year two. He is a very, very solid, safe. Yes, he can get dinged up. Yes, it can be a little wonky and game to game, but he is going to put out weeks where he does perfectly fine for your team throughout. And the fact that he's going as the RB19, he's going as the RB19. If he just does what he's done the past 2 years, he already returns value. Unless somehow this year we have more running backs than 20 going over the 200 mark, which we haven't seen in recent years. He's a value. He's a value. I just don't know where do I put him in my little categories other than just Antonio Gibson's a value. And I never thought I would be ranting about Antonio Gibson, but end of rant.
It was a good rant, and he's a player that I now have to do a little more research into and figure out why I don't like him. You didn't sway me just yet, but I just got to figure out why I don't like him. All right, let's run through. Got a few more running backs to cover, and then we'll get to the fact attack here in a couple of minutes. Let's just run through. So we got volume running backs: Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery. I totally agree that Montgomery is a volume running back. Chubb and Jacobs, I think, Kareem Hunt is going to eat into Nick Chubb, and I think Kenyon Drake and Zamir White are going to eat into the carries there for Josh Jacobs. I don't see them as the volume running backs that you do. But that's just me.
Chubb has had 190 attempts or more every year. It's been 4 years of 190 or more. And
So he's volume in terms of touches, but Kareem Hunt's going to eat into his fantasy scoring. That's why I'm kind of down on Chubb.
And again, Chubb over the past he was at 194.5 in 2018. So that's 1 year below that 200 threshold. But the past 3 years has been 255, 207, and 215. So yeah, it's pretty consistent that he's in that range. And so it comes mostly from his rushing volume than anything else. And I agree with you. Hunt eats into that, but he doesn't eat into it to the fact where I don't think that you should be distracted by that when drafting Chubb.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the old man discounts here. We've got Lenny Fournette, James Conner, Zeke Elliott, Cordarrelle Patterson, and Melvin Gordon. I left Aaron Jones off though. You've got him in here. I don't think he's that old. But
he's old for running back ages.
I mean, Melvin Gordon and CPAT are the only two in my mind that are like old because I think they're above like 28. And that's old. I think and Fournette. I mean, Fournette, you could make the case that Fournette could be a solid RB1 this year.
Yeah. Fournette is 27. Jones is 27. James Conner's 27. Zeke is only 26.
Lot of miles on those.
Yes, a lot of miles on them. But, definitely guys that are, Patterson is 31.
Yeah,
he's also a wide receiver, which, Sleeper just changed that. But whatever, Sleeper. Take away my advantage. That's cool.
So yeah, these guys, I mean, I'm not probably taking any of them to be my RB. I mean, I should say that if I'm going a zero RB strategy, I'd be happy to have these guys as my RB1. But I'm not shelling out, top tier draft capital or auction value AAV for this. So,
yeah. And I think these are all guys that you can, if you're doing a zero RB, or you're not going to get Fournette or I threw Aaron Jones in there, but you're not going to get some of them in the 5th, 6th round, which zero RB truthers will tell you is what you're really aiming for. But you will get them later than the Connor, Zeke. Those are guys going in 3rd, 4th rounds of drafts.
Yeah. Patterson,
Gordon, those are guys going much, much later in drafts. Patterson isn't the value he was last year when you could get him in the 18th round in Underdog, which I, told everybody to do. So just saying, I'm pat myself on the back.
So Adam, thank you again for the comment here. So we were just talking about Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. Adam thinks if Brissett is the quarterback in Cleveland, Hunt will eat even more into Chubb's workload. That's an interesting take. I didn't go there right away. Mine is just more kind of a split backfield. And historically, when Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are healthy, they do split the workload.
Would the random training camp Jordan Howard-esque type of tweet that says he's been working on his pass catching change that at all for you, Pat?
No.
Or Adam? No. Okay, I didn't think so.
Not for me. No. All right. We talked a little bit about handcuffs. We've talked about all these guys. I mean, some guys have standalone value like AJ Dillon, Kareem Hunt, Devin Singletary. And there's one in here I think is just a pure handcuff play, and that's Tony Pollard for all you Zeke Elliott fans out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Seth. I don't mean to trash your Cowboys. All right, and
that's what it is.
Our favorite category. I wouldn't draft him, never, even if there was a fire. You have Breece Hall in there.
Yeah, that's all me. I don't know if you're in the same boat with me on that one, but
no, I'm going to expand that to all Jets running backs.
Oh, no, not Michael Carter. Yeah, it's probably true.
That's just how I feel.
I mean, maybe if it's just a little fire and I can kind of handle it with, like the little fire extinguisher that you're
Never,
supposed to have in your kitchen.
even if there's a fire.
All
All
right, fine. You're
Thank
probably right, Pat, but
right.
I think we're overemphasizing what
Yeah,
the
maybe.
Jets could be, and that
Maybe.
makes me nervous. Yeah, that makes me real nervous.
All right. Shall we wrap up the show here?
I think
Our
we
favorite
shall.
part? All
Favorite.
Love it. All right. Scoured the Twitterverse to find your questions. We're going to put 5 minutes on the clock. We're going to answer these, as many of these as we can. Up first, from at Do or Dynasties, a 12-man Superflex PPR tight end premium league, Amari Cooper or Elijah Mitchell?
I'm assuming this is Dynasty based on the name, so I'm gonna go with Elijah Mitchell. We're sure it's Mitchell, not Moore.
I am 90. I put this question on here, but now you got me second guessing it here, Seth.
Because I was about to real quick say I'm gonna take Elijah Moore every day and twice on Sunday, but now I'm like, wait, is that Elijah Mitchell or Elijah Moore? And is that what they meant, or is that now what they didn't mean? This is super team.
It is Elijah Mitchell.
Okay, this is super team dependent to me. Because I think Amari Cooper does have some life left in him for a really good showing in Cleveland. But if I need a running back, or if I have a whole lot of wide receivers, I'm happy moving on from Amari Cooper, who's an older gentleman in the football realm, to get a young running back, depending on where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's up, Shane?
Oh, hey, Shane. What's going on, man?
And Shane says Cooper. So,
yeah,
Shane, I'm sorry. Welcome to the show, but Shane, you're wrong.
No, I'm still taking Amari Cooper over Elijah Mitchell, even with everything going on in Cleveland. I feel like he's just better, and better players are going to produce. I mean, he's just better. Give me Amari Cooper over Elijah Mitchell.
I think shelf life has a little bit to do with it for me, and I'm trying not to be too age focused, but to me that makes a difference for me.
Fair. All right, up next we have from at Kanban NFL, which running back do you prefer in Dynasty, Cam Akers or AJ Dillon? Added this one specifically for, I guess, post conversation, because we talked a lot about Akers and Dillon.
Yeah, I will take. I think it's Akers, in the hopes that he's healthy and takes on number one responsibilities in the Rams. And I don't think you're not getting that with AJ Dillon. You're not getting him taking on number one without something happening to Aaron Jones. So I'd rather bet on Cam Akers just taking care of it for himself and taking that next step versus taking AJ Dillon and hoping that something goes wrong with Aaron Jones. And Shane, I'm just sorry. You're 0 for 2, Shane. You are striking out tonight.
I'm with Akers. I like Cam Akers in this one. I think the athletic profile for Akers is better. He has the clearer path to RB1 and RB touches. So I'm going Cam Akers. Shane says not this year, but next. He doesn't believe in Akers. That's fair.
Yeah.
From at KC Titleist 11, I initially read this as KC Titties, and I laughed when I reread it and got the name right. So at KC Titleist 11, here's your Elijah Moore, but this is a redraft PPR league. Elijah Moore or Hollywood Brown?
Because give me a can I say competent offense with the Cardinals?
Here's the reason. Here's the reason why. Yeah, I say here's the reason why I'm going with Hollywood Brown. No DeAndre Hopkins. He will be the primary receiver in that offense for the first 6 weeks. He has a great rapport with Kyler Murray. I trust Kyler Murray more than I trust Zach Wilson. So give me Hollywood over Elijah Moore here.
Yeah, and we have split in our comments because Adam says Moore and Shane says Brown. So,
I feel like I'm agreeing with Shane way too much this week.
And that's how you know you're wrong, Pat.
All right. From @StartSit1, who would you rather take out of these four in best ball? So we're all over the place with our formats today. So we got best ball: Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Devontae Adams, or CeeDee Lamb.
Because I like to go running back heavy, I'm gonna go with probably Joe Mixon, and partly with what you were saying earlier, Pat, about Joe just having just an offense around him.
They have it, and I don't know what it is, but they have it this year.
Yeah. And the way I like to build my best ball drafts are usually having a small core of running backs that I feel really confident with.
Yeah.
And then just hammering like 9 wide receivers.
Yeah.
So that's where I think Adams is going to be fine this year. I love CeeDee Lamb. I think Swift is going to be okay, but I want to get one of those running backs I feel super confident about.
I'm all in on Joe Mixon as well. Talked about him earlier in the show about being the RB1, so I will take Joe Mixon out of this group as well. And finally, last question from @PPR Fantasy Tips: which wide receiver will have the better PPR season? Russell Gage, Allen Lazard, Kadarius Toney, or Jarvis Landry?
And that's
good timing.
Perfect timing. It's a good thing I started pausing it when you read the question. You know what? I'm gonna go slightly out of the box here.
So while you're thinking, we've got some responses here. Shane is going with Allen Lazard, and Adam is going with Russell Gage.
So here's my thought. And I think Shane and I actually talked about this on his show.
Ooh.
I don't understand the Jarvis Landry hate in New Orleans.
Okay.
You're getting him as wide receiver 50, and just looking at fantasy data right now, Allen Lazard is wide receiver 47, Toney is 43. And who else was on it? Gage. I feel like Gage is his numbers just keep going higher and higher. Where is Gage in rankings right now? I don't see him, but I feel like you're getting such a value with Landry, and I think Winston is going to have a really, really good year. And to me, that's where it's going to be Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave. I feel like those three are going to do really, really well. And I feel like that Saints offense is going to do well. And maybe it's not just who will have the better season, but I think who's going to be the better value is Jarvis Landry. Yeah. And I hope that's not changing the question too much, but I just see a lot of value there.
Yeah. I mean, all of them. So fantasy data, has Russell Gage as wide receiver
42.
42. Toney's 43, Lazard 47, Landry 50. Now, I'm immediately ruling out Landry and Toney because of quarterback play. I want no part of that.
Winston threw for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm. He did.
He can do that again.
You're right.
And
he
did. He has comparable wide receivers, I would say.
I'm taking Allen Lazard strictly because he's tied to Aaron Rodgers. He's the wide receiver 1 there. Vacated targets are a thing. Like somebody in Green Bay has to catch the ball. Lazard has the rapport. He's put in the work. We know Aaron Rodgers hates rookies in first and second and third. Like he just hates young players.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take Allen Lazard out of this group because he's tied to Aaron Rodgers, and there's literally no one else ahead of him on the depth chart. That's good enough for me.
I think there's a lot of yes, Adam. Adam brings it back all the way
full circle
to what we were talking about
full
before.
Circle.
Aaron Jones is going to eat this season and has the potential. You put him as wide receiver 1, but to be the running back 1. There we go. That's what we like to do. We bring it all full circle on this show.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, that does it for the Fact Attack this week, and that does it for the show this week. Wrapping up our rankings, tiers, clusters, whatever you want to call it.
Next week, we have a really fun show.
Oh, we do.
Bringing on Brandon Lejeune from at Devi Deep Dive. If you are into Devi, this is a do not miss type of show because he has one of the just more extensive things I've ever seen for Devi. It is absolutely phenomenal. And, kind of bouncing back and forth between, redraft, dynasty, getting an idea of what's going to happen next year, who's going to be those important guys. Brandon follows these guys from the time they're like seniors in high school to when they're getting into the NFL. So he has extensive knowledge about, what your next draft is going to look like,
right,
and why it's not a bad idea to, make a play for a 2025 first round pick, because he can, he's usually on top of who those guys might be. So a really, really fun show coming up next week as well.
Looking forward to it. All right. So real quick, make sure you give the show a follow. We're at The Fantasy Facts. I'm at Dynasty_Pat. Seth is at FF the At Home Dad. Use the code FAQS, FAQS at fantasydata.com. 20% off your subscription purchase. Use the code FAQS at underdog.com. Up to $100. So 100% deposit match up to $100 if it's your first deposit. More comments coming in. I'm going to put this one up because Shane says I'm right.
Which just makes both of you wrong.
Possibly. But with that, Shane, Adam, thanks so much for joining, for commenting. We appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
Catch you on the flip side.